Boom. Guys, what's the crack? Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Crypto with Dinny. This is the place where we teach you how to retire early. Today, I've got an awesome guest, someone who has been a friend of mine since school. Interesting, very interesting dude. I was just thinking about the intro before I logged on, Darren. And I was like, well, when we were in school, we were talking about like, what did you do at the weekend? They're like, oh, I was mountain biking, and Darren was jumping out of airplanes, skydiving. So Darren is owner of Magic Mayan. I'm a family man, one of my school friends, and Bitcoiner among other things. Darren, you're very welcome, man.
Thank you very much, Dinny. Yeah, it's good to chat.
So please give us an introduction. Darren O'Connor, tell us about yourself.
So,
Tell us what you do.
You asked me to come on the podcast, and I was like, geez, how do I do an introduction of myself? And the thought occurred to me that, you know that Baz Luhrmann song, Everybody Should Wear Sunscreen?
Yeah.
There's a line in that, right, that says, don't worry if you don't know what it is you want to do with your life. Most interesting 40-year-olds still don't.
I like it.
That's me. I'll give you a quick background kind of from school onwards, right? So when I left school, I studied animation. I became an animator, and I was very disillusioned then with the industry. It was a very hard industry to make a consistent living from. You move from contract to contract. You'd be traveling from A to B. You're constantly trying to fight for work. You're competing with other very talented animators. You might get a chunk of work and then you'll get nothing. And so then you'd be well paid for the work that you did, but then you have to try and budget and make that last until the next contract came. And I never knew when that next contract was going to come. So I said, you know what, this isn't a life that I want to live. So, right, what else can I do? I was like, do you know, I really enjoy skydiving. Let's give this skydiving stuff a crack. So I had some savings in the credit union in Portmarnock, and I went to them and I said, listen, I want to buy a car. Can I have a loan? And they're like, oh, yeah. We wholeheartedly support loans for cars and so on and so forth. And with the loan, I bought an airplane and a bunch of parachutes. And I struck a deal then with a farmer, and I started operating a little skydiving school. I set up a website, set up a little skydiving school down in Neenah, Tipperary, and ran that for a couple of years. And that was very interesting. First season, all the parachutes robbed, broken into, parachute stolen. There's no insurance on, because I literally had built porta cabins, and so there was no way we could get insurance for porta cabins and all that kind of stuff. And it spent a good bit of money on anti-vandal shipping containers. And I swear to God, I reckon they got in quicker than I would have done with my keys.
Okay.
Like, genuinely, it's absolutely bizarre. I reckon they just ripped off the handle, clamped the bolt, hit it with a hammer, which fractured, pulled out the bolt, and then just with a screwdriver, open it up. So anyway, lost all the parachutes.
I hope they, I wonder, did they ever use them?
They turned up in like Lithuania or Latvia or something like that. We saw pictures of them being used, and they had been bought secondhand from a dealer or whatever.
Yeah.
And so anyway, kind of we muddled our way through. We did a deal with one of the parachute manufacturers where they said, look, we won't see you short. They sent over a load of parachutes and saw us through the season. We built up enough money to actually then be able to pay for the parachutes and all that kind of stuff. I actually met my wife. I took my wife on a tandem skydive. She was my passenger, and I was busy trying to ask her out, and she was busy trying to like not die. And so anyway, that was kind of that. And then I started, growing up, and I remember I was sitting in the airplane with a tandem passenger. They were all super excited. And I was thinking, I wonder, have I got sausages in the fridge for dinner? And then I went, hang on a second, what am I doing? My focus needs to be here 100%. And that's when I said, you know what? I think I'm actually done with this. So I exited out, and I was like, right, what'll I do now? So I I took one or two sales jobs because I actually found I'm actually quite good in a sales role. I can talk enough rubbish to be able to convince somebody to be able to take on board what it is that I'm peddling at the time. And I was like, yeah, no, sales, we're doing sales for other people. I was like, is it a thing for me? So I started a dog creche. I was like, love dogs. Maybe that's a thing that I want to do. And I very quickly found out that it's not all about working with dogs. 90% of the job is cleaning up after the dogs. And I was like, right, okay, that's not for me. Let's see where else we can go. So my father-in-law, who runs a health food store, he says, listen, he says, you love cooking. He says, you love cooking for us. Why don't you make some chocolate? He says, I see there's a little niche on our shelves for chocolate. He says, why don't you make some chocolate? We'll see if we can sell it in our shop. I was like, cool. So I YouTubed how to make chocolate and figured that part of it out and basically started selling chocolate, and it quickly kind of took off. And all of a sudden I found myself selling into kind of 300 stores, and I'm making chocolate and selling chocolate and making chocolate and selling chocolate. And now we'll kind of fast forward to today, where I still have my little chocolate business and it kind of ticks over. And I also then consult with another bigger chocolate company called Skellig's Chocolate. And I actually help them kind of drive sales and bring on new customers and kind of do what I'm actually good at in an industry that I'm actually interested in. And take me forward to today. What am I going to do next year? Good question. We'll see.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's such an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
I can relate to it, and it's awesome. So before we get into maybe Bitcoin, I'll first say, and I know the answer to this question already. Do you invest into any other asset classes? Well, I know you're an entrepreneur, so you invest into business, which is a huge asset class. But are you interested in any other asset classes?
Well, look, from a financial point of view, I think, if you have disposable income that you don't need, rather than let it sit in the bank, it makes absolute sense to invest. So yeah, I do some S&P 500. I do a little bit of pharmaceutical, which I think is very interesting. I own a little bit of Pfizer. I'm an absolute Tesla bull. I think Tesla will go to 4,000. That's kind of my gut tells me that's where it's going to go. I mean, they're talking about doing a share split along with Google, and actually, if Google do a share split, I'll be jumping in there as well. So but I'll be honest with you, right? I'm an absolute average Joe when it comes to money. Even though I've been making sales and I've been making money and I built my house and I drive the car that I've been dreaming about driving, I now drive, and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to money, I'm an absolute average Joe. I don't count myself as somebody who's smarter than anybody else. And I've literally only learned about money in the last year. As a 40-year-old man, I'm not ashamed to admit I've only learned that how money works in the last 12 months.
Yeah, it's so funny because I only seen a tweet that there's a show on RTE about making money, but it never questions what is money or how money works. But it's trying to teach people, and that's, I suppose, it's a problem with our whole world. We're all the same unless you actively choose to study it or get what we call orange pilled, which we'll probably lead into now in a moment. We spend our life exchanging our time for this thing that we call money without ever questioning, like, what is this technology and how does it work? And surely with anything, we need to if we want something, we should understand how it works so we can play the rules to our advantage. You know what I mean? We can leverage the rules to our advantage. And if we just mindlessly try to accumulate money without ever understanding how it works and what it is, I suppose that is what we all instinctively fall into, that trap of get a job, earn money, save that money, get rich. But the get rich part never actually comes from that model, I suppose.
So, but then you ask the question, what is getting rich? For one person, it's something completely different to somebody else. Somebody might be financially rich. Somebody might be rich in family.
Yes.
I know you're you're an avid fan of Rich Dad Poor Dad. I reckon I've bought Rich Dad Poor Dad about 8 times. And each time I buy it, I'll read it and I'll say, listen, you need to read this book. And off it goes out into the ether. And I'll end up having to buy it again because I want to read it again. And it's a very old book. It's funny, actually. You told me to read the book, The Bitcoin Standard. And the Bitcoin Standard, I think, came out in 2018. And they're talking about, Bitcoin been 10 grand and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, imagine buying Bitcoin at 10 grand. Like that would be just amazing. And I kind of think we're in the same situation now where it's like, in 3 or 4 years time, imagine buying Bitcoin at 45 grand. Do you know?
Yeah.
But there was a comment that was or a little piece in the book in Rich Dad Poor Dad where he explains that a friend of his had a son who wanted to buy a car. How much was the car? It was about 6 grand. And he says, okay, no problem. Rather than giving you the 6 grand, I'm giving you 6 grand to go and invest into stocks, shares, bonds, however you see fit. Okay. When you make that 6 grand back, you give me the 6 grand and you're now going to have money to be able to make of your own to go and buy the car that you want to buy. And I thought, wow, what an amazing life lesson. And I think it's our responsibility to be able to educate our kids, because it's not the education system that we currently have that teaches our kids about how the world works and how money works and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's our responsibility to be able to do that. And I think you got to start early. Like, I have a 7-year-old son and he hasn't a notion about what money is. I mean, I know the 7-year-olds that do, but he hasn't a clue. He wanted to buy a toy yesterday, and he says, I need 22 euros and 95 cents. I said, okay, let's pull out your piggy bank and see what we've got. And he pulled out a 20 cent. And here's 20. I have 20. And I'm kind of like, all right, well, how many cents are in it? And but it's our responsibility to be able to teach our kids and give them that financial education that I think the education system has no interest in.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you say of like what is rich. There's much more to it than financial wealth. However, I do think that we all need to master the money game, because you can't have time with your family if you've no money and you have to just go to work all the time to try and support your family. So I think the money game
I'll give you a little saying. Money doesn't necessarily bring happiness, but lack of money guarantees misery.
Yeah, true, perfect, deadly. Awesome. So when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, are you solely interested in Bitcoin or both Bitcoin and crypto?
Okay, so I'll give you. So I've been in crypto for just over a year. I took your course, and it sent me down a right old rabbit hole. And I think it's the same rabbit hole that many other crypto and Bitcoin people have gone down. But I'll give you the story and I'll tell you where I'm at now today
Deadly.
versus where I was last year. So I had actually been introduced to crypto back in 2010, back when it was nothing. It was, it was for the geeks and the programmers and the people wanting to live outside of society and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, that's not me. I don't understand it. I'm not, putting any energy and effort into something that I don't understand. And I watched it over the years, and the whole Silk Road and the media selling it as a, it's a way that easy way to buy drugs and all of that kind of stuff. Not a scene I was into, not a scene I was interested in. And kind of watched it develop, and then I watched it kind of skyrocket, hit 4,000 euro, made the news headlines, and I went, wow, how on earth is this? This is just, it's ridiculous. I still don't understand it. I watched it crash. I watched loads of people lose loads of money, and I said, I'm glad I didn't touch it with a barge pole. Soared back to 10 grand, and I went, geez, again, how? Don't understand it. How does this work? Still not touching with a barge pole. And I remember it was 2018. It was 2017, 2018. And I had a friend come and stay with his family. And he says, what do you think of Bitcoin? Do you think it's an asset class I should be investing into? And I said, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. It's too volatile. I don't understand it. It's built on nothing. I read into and soaked up all of the news media that was kind of been peddled out there.
The mainstream.
The mainstream. Look, I bought into it. I'll be 100% honest with you. And he went and he bought into Bitcoin. It collapsed. He sold all his Bitcoin, and I said, look, don't mean to kind of float my own boat, but I told you so. Right?
Kicking money's down.
Look. And so meanwhile, I was Tesla. I was like, look, this is going to go to 400 euros a share. And I was like, that's, if I was you, this is where I'd put your money. And boom, it hit $400. And I was like, look, again, don't mean to sound like a savvy investor, but told you so. And just Tesla kind of kept kind of skyrocketing. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is in the background and it's bubbling and it's soaring and it's crashing and it's soaring and it's crashing, and people losing their shirts and there's people becoming millionaires. And I went, it's just too volatile for me. I just don't understand it. And that's when our mutual friend, Darren, said, look, I did Dinny's course. He said, it opened my eyes. He says, whether it's a real thing or not, he says, I put money in, and he says, I'm up. Now, this was right at the kind of 2020 bull run. This is when, he put his money in, and it just started like really kind of climbing. And I said, right, okay, I don't understand. Dinny's always on about educate yourself. And I've got a course that educates. I said, okay, cool. And your course was like dirt cheap. And I was like, cool, look, I'll put an afternoon in. And I was like, how do you put your money in and how do you get your money out? That was my big fear. And I'll dip my toe in. I'll put 100 euros. I'll be willing to risk 100 euros. And if I'm able to get my money in and I'm able to get my money out, now I'll have a little bit of a further look. So I started to enjoy the whole process of putting my money in, and boom, I'm down. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm down, whatever, 2 or 4 euros or whatever the case might be. And boom, I'm up 20 euros. I'm like, wow, this gets my heart racing. I'm getting a kind of a cool feeling out of this. And so I started kind of diving into the whole world of meme coins and, understanding what projects are and understanding how the crypto world works. And then I went down the right old rabbit hole of, all right, well, Doge exploded and collapsed. We've got Shiba Inu on the cusp of maybe doing something. So I'm like, cool, I'll put 100 quid in here. So I bought Shiba Inu, 100 quid, and I got something like 10 million Shiba Inu tokens. And I'm like, cool, I'm a Shiba Inu multi-millionaire. And it rose, and all of a sudden I've got way more money, and then it just tanked. And I said, right, I've lost my shirt on that. My 100 euros has gone down to about 20 euros. Feck it, that was a life's lesson. If I'd have hung on to my 10 million Shiba Inu now, I'd be having a very different conversation. And that was a great lesson for me to learn, because I heard you talking about people putting in their money and going on that emotional wave and then selling all, and then off it goes and skyrockets again, and they buy in and it collapses and they sell, and they're on that perpetual losing motion. And I went, wow, right, there's the lesson right there. Cool, lesson learned. Let's chalk that down and apply what Dinny actually teaches, which is find projects you like, dollar cost average in, and just hold on for dear life. And it's funny, at the same time, I listened to a story about Warren Buffett, and people are like, look, you've got an investing strategy. Why don't people follow your investing strategy? And he said, it's simple. He says, people don't want to get rich slow. And I went, okay, cool. Buy and hold. Simple as that. Buy and hold.
It's almost too easy, isn't it?
Almost too easy.
And I think, Darren, your journey as well is the typical journey that people come in. We, like myself included, we come in because it's a get rich quick. Then we get humbled or wrecked. And then we either stay poor and continue trying to do something that doesn't work, or we get orange pilled, and we learn about patience. And we learn that you can get really rich if you're patient, But if you try to get really rich really quick, you just wreck yourself every time.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. It's interesting. And I came into the crypto world from I want to leverage the available money that I have that I don't need and turn it into something that I can, like you said, go and have the crack with. I want to go off traveling Europe, and I want to go indoor skydiving. I want to travel around to the indoor skydiving place, and that's what I want to use my money for. And I want to take my kids along with me and have the crack. But the very interesting journey that I've taken, and this is where I stand now, is that you've been harping on about inflation. And I went, right, okay, let's have a look into inflation, see what the crack is with this. What's the story with hyperinflation? Why is it that a country like Venezuela, you can't buy a loaf of bread with 2 million flipping Venezuelan currency that they have, right? How does that stuff all happen? And then, so I went down a right old journey of going right back to kind of early monetary systems when, people were bartering and trading, and they needed to be able to trade further afield than their little local village. So there needs to be a common media of exchange, and how it kind of developed into, gold coins. And then there became quantitative easing with gold coins, and then clipping gold and mixing with alloys and kind of devaluing the gold that's there. And it hits a point then that it all collapses.
Yeah, debasement's not new.
And then the cycle carries on, and then there's a build up and a collapse, and then we hit kind of the end of World War II, where Germany's made to pay back all of the negatives that they've kind of done, and rebuild industry in the countries that they've destroyed, and all of their industry is then taken over by the French and the Belgians and the Dutch. And the Germans then say, well, no, hang on a second, we're going to pay our workers not to work. And so they went printing money, and the market got built up and it collapses. And then we come to today, and we've had like 70 years of a monetary system that we're now on the precipice of the top of the cycle that's getting ready for the collapse. It's not new. We never learn. There's going to be great pain in the future. This is just my opinions now. It's going to be great pain in the future for people who don't understand how the monetary system works. I think even if you do understand how the monetary system works and you're prepared for it, we're still going to go through an awful lot of pain. But if I can insulate myself from that in just the smallest way, then I'm going to do everything I can to insulate myself. And I think this is where Bitcoin has a great chance. I'm not saying it's going to be the solution, but it's going to be a possible solution to insulate ourselves from the upcoming kind of dystopian collapse. And unfortunately, I take a very dim view on the world now that I understand how the monetary system works, and how I can see the monetary system going to collapse, and how totalitarian control is going to come in, and we're going to be hit with digital currencies. And I think digital currencies are going to be the quote unquote solution that the government are going to come in with, because they've got their own cryptocurrency, deadly, that they control. And they can tell us what we can spend our money on and what we can't spend our money on, and where our money should be spent. And lo and behold, there's an economic crash. And I'm sorry, but we need to take some extra taxes from you. We're not going to allow you to decide what it is that you want to pay. We're going to take it, and then you can either like it or lump it. And I'm sorry, I have a great resistance against that, which I think Bitcoin holds the one potential key to being able to trade and keep your anonymity, which I think is a human right. I don't think that we should have everything monitored and what we spend our money on. If I want to go and buy that second steak this week, that's my prerogative. If I want to spend an extra, whatever, 20 euros on more beer, that's my prerogative. Nobody's going to be able to tell me I can't take that extra flight to go off to wherever it is that I want to go to. No, I don't think so.
Yeah. It's I suppose, as you say, once you take it's like the Matrix. It's like I can show you the truth, but you might like it.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I think life is the Matrix. Like, I always reference it, but I really do. Like, I think I see it as a documentary, that film, not a film, because you really can. It's very relatable. And I think Bitcoin is relatable. I also think, um, and like, Bitcoin is the solution to all this. If we didn't have Bitcoin, we would have no hope. If we didn't have Bitcoin and we were just like, right, what do we do? Do we buy gold? But gold is very centralized and it's physical, so it is easy to seize and take from you. But Bitcoin, in my thesis, is the solution to allow people to remain sovereign. Because when we get digital, I was going to say if we get digital money, it's inevitable and predictable. Of course, we will have digital money eventually. I don't know the timeline, but physical cash, there's a war on physical cash, and everything that's happened in the last 2 years has accelerated that war and reduced physical cash. And so we will get digital money. That's inevitable. And one thing I did want to say is on privacy, on that money shouldn't be political or shouldn't be tied to politics and privacy. It's like, it's all well and good sometimes, but then if the wrong political regime comes in and they have all the control, well, the thing goes to shit, and it goes to shit really quick. So while it might work fine for the moment, look at history, look at areas where that happened. It was fine until it went to shit. And that's why money needs to be apolitical, and money just needs to be, as money sort of has been in times when humanity had prosperity. We were on sound money standards, and money just operated as it should, sort of in a free market way, as opposed to a manipulated way. Like everything that we've built over the last 20 years, it's like, to rational thinking people, it doesn't make sense, because in life there's consequences. That's how the universe works. It's how the world works, and everything works like that except for money. It's like, no consequences. If you are in this position, there's no consequences. For me or you with our businesses, if we screw up,
it all falls down on top of us. Yeah.
Well, the free market sorts us out. We go out of business. We lose money. But we have a thing called too big to fail. And so things that should rot and should fall apart and the free market should clear out, don't. And then,
if the banking industry was a small independent business, it had been gone out of business a long time ago. You're 100% right. Too big to fail. Lo and behold, the banks mucked us up in the last 2007 recession. And the government come along and go, do you know what? Here's a pile of cash. Keep going, because we can't do without you.
Yeah.
Jeez, I tell you, I'd love to be in that position.
Yeah, I think it's just a systemic problem from our fiat money. And even like when we go to government or local council, it's just like when you're an entrepreneur and you realize how consequences and life works, and then you see that system where there's no consequences and money is squandered, and it's just like, there's laws that we must be sovereign because you have to give us our money, and it doesn't matter what we do with it. I know we waste it. I know we fuck around. That a private company could do the job in half the time with a quarter of the staff, but our public companies screw up the job and have to go back and do it over and over. And it's like, we laugh it off, and it's, again, not an attack on council workers or anything like that, leaning on shovels, but everyone is aware that it's just an absolute squandering of our money. And while that's all fine, while we're all wealthy, I think we're going into the 10 years where we have a problem with inflation, money printing. Regardless, there's going to be a price to pay for closing the world for a whole year, and people aren't going to be okay anymore with the squandering of money, and they shouldn't be. They should never be okay with it, I suppose, because it's their money. I think a normal person doesn't realize the tax they pay. Most people work 6 months of the year just to pay tax, to give it to an institution, an organization, or a company. People don't realize like that it's a company that squanders the money and doesn't allocate it correctly, and they are giving away 6 months of their life to go throw it at that company, and then the other 6 months is to try and provide for their family and try and get out of, try and earn money so they can spend more time with their family. And that's sort of the systemic world we live in, that we never really question this matrix. We just sort of live in it.
Because it's exactly like the Matrix documentary. It's too painful to look outside. So do you know what? Put on my blinkers, and I'd rather not. No thanks. And unfortunately, it's those people that are going to end up in the biggest suffering position. But just coming back on a point, you're saying like the world closed down for 2 years. And this has a kind of knock-on effect. This was happening anyway. It's just been accelerated, and watch how all the politicians are going to spin the Russia-Ukraine invasion, followed by post-Brexit, or not, post COVID, post-Brexit. Watch how they use all of those to explain why we're being hit with inflation, and they will not talk about the absolute kind of baseline problem with the fiat money system and how they hold all of the reins, which is why I think Bitcoin kind of comes in and it offers, I'm not saying it's going to be the solution, but I think it's a solution that's out there to be able to trade. Did you see Jack Mallers has recently come out with Strike and using the Bitcoin network? So technically you're not buying Bitcoin. You're using your fiat money, goes onto the Bitcoin network, comes off the Bitcoin network and pays in fiat money. And here's all of a sudden a solution for this network that everybody's going to end up using Bitcoin, whether they know it or not. I think it's hugely important.
It's inevitable that I like that from Jack Mallers' announcement. And in case any of our listeners haven't heard of it, what they're going to do is, as Darren was explaining, if you want to exchange or buy anything, you can buy it, but you're using Bitcoin's network. So we've been talking, a lot of time I talk about Bitcoin, the asset, but there's also the network, and the network has huge value. And the value of the network is that we're able to move value across the world. We can basically, it's a native currency of the internet is what it basically is. So in our traditional system, if I want to move value, it takes 3 days to settle, to get cash finality. But on Bitcoin's network, I can do it instantly and for free. In my legacy world, I have to take a 3% haircut if I'm a company on every transaction because of this system. And what was interesting was, this is technology we built in the 50s and we're still using. And you don't have to be a rocket science just to realize that if we have a solution, a newer technology that changes the game from you take a 3% haircut to use our system, or we have a different system where you're taking a 0.3%. It's a 90% drop in the charge. Like, of course the world is going to use it. Everyone's going to adopt it. And it won't happen until it can be frictionless. You know, Netflix didn't become one of the biggest companies in the world until it was all worked out. When the software was clunky and difficult to use, everyone was still going and buying their DVDs. But as soon as the frictions were worked out, Blockbuster went bankrupt very fast, and Netflix became one of the biggest companies in the world. Because we as humans, we move towards technology, and if something is cheaper and better and faster, we're just going to adopt it. It's almost inevitable. So I just want to ask you a little bit about Bitcoin and the asset. So
yep.
Why do you buy Bitcoin? Why do you own Bitcoin, the asset?
So there's a multitude. Okay, so number one, right? So if we're dealing with Jack Mallers' solution where we can spend our Bitcoin, I don't want to spend any of my Bitcoin. I view it as a store of value. I view it as digital gold, and I want to accumulate as many Satoshis as is entirely possible while I believe it's still on discount. I think it's important for everybody. My two boys have Bitcoin. They have their own Binance account that I use some of their children's allowance, and I just take it and put it in, and I'm just going to let that go. Just let it go. Every month I'm going to put X amount in and just let that go, rather than putting it into a savings account where it's potentially going to earn negative interest and potentially all get taken away from us when the fiat currency crashes. So I think it's a security net. Okay, I think it's cool, right? I think it offers me potential freedom in the future, and I think for the future I'm going to be able to trade with the likes of Bitcoin. So no more than I've got a polytunnel out the back and I'm growing vegetables for the future. I'm trying to become a little bit more sovereign. I want to control much more of my own world. I want to generate my own electricity that I put into my electric car. I want to generate my own electricity that I feed my house and cook for my kids with. I don't want to rely on anybody else because nobody has my interest at heart. And I think Bitcoin plays a role, that same role in trying to achieve that sovereignty. I don't think you'll ever become fully sovereign. I don't slaughter animals for meat or anything like that, but
Not yet.
I'm going to be able to trade.
Not yet is what I'm saying, because I know you. Give it a year. That's awesome. Just to touch on, because when it comes to the fiat world and that, like, there's a thing, and it's like, don't doubt the Fed, and like when it comes to fiat currency, it's obviously that they go down in value over time. I don't know if fiat currency will collapse in my lifetime, or will it just do what it's always done, and will they innovate and build digital currencies on top of it to sort of keep it kicking the can down the road, I suppose. But do you have a timeline, just for sort of your opinion of a collapse?
So I think this is my gut feeling, and I have no basis because I'm not educated in this world. It's just a gut feeling. I think in the next 2 to 4 years, there's going to be a 5-day lockdown of banks. You're not going to be able to get your money. People are going to freak out. They're going to panic. All of a sudden, all of their savings they're not going to be able to access. The government then are going to, or the governments, because it's going to be a collective European. I think we're going to go into a European digital currency. And if you've got 1,000 quid saved in your bank account, you have 1,000 euros in digital currency. You can use your euros. You can use your digital currency. It amounts to the same thing until they say, we're now not accepting €5 notes and €10 notes. You have to use the 20s, and we're not really able to give change in 5s and 10s. So technically the 20s are gone. You kind of have to use your digital currencies, and all of this that they control. Okay, and they can inflate it or deflate it as they see fit. I think 2 to 4 years it's going to happen. I think we're definitely going to see it in our lifetime, but that's coming from a very uneducated perspective. So take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. So I suppose having Bitcoin, the reason I love Bitcoin is because it's outside that system. Everything within fiat system, property, stocks, your money in the bank, it's all connected. It's all tied into each other. It's all built on debt. Versus Bitcoin is alternative. So all that can happen, and it doesn't affect the Bitcoin that you own or what you can do with your Bitcoin. And that's why Bitcoin does allow you to build your level of sovereignty. And I suppose it's like, as you say, some people don't like to hear that could happen, but it's happened already. It's happened in...
Mommy.
It's happened.
Sorry, Dinny, my wife is calling. My children are coming in.
Bring them on. In Russia, we've seen that. In that people couldn't get their money out of the bank in as little as a couple of weeks ago.
They did it in Greece. When Greece hit their tough times, Greece came in and said, look, any accounts with over 100 grand in it, we're going taking half of that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cyprus too. Deadly. So what would you say to Irish people? I find from being around the world and being at different conferences, then I come back home and it's like Bitcoin is just not as big here or as well known or as understood. Have you any sort of ideas why Irish people are reluctant, or what stop? Is it our talking heads? Is it our people in charge who are a bit behind the 8 ball on this, or what's stopping people from learning? Because you and me both know that Bitcoin has improved our life and made our life better, gave us more security for our future, gave us more hope for our future, basically improved our life. Why aren't other people? What's the barrier? What's the friction, do you think?
So, see, Irish people are so conservative. Look at flipping, you needed a prescription for contraceptive, way back when. Irish are just so conservative, it drives me round the twist. Okay. The second thing is, I know there's a lot of suffering. We've got a housing crisis, we've got an energy crisis, and there is a lot of suffering. But overall, we're too comfortable. The government will look after us. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they've done us all right. I know they're kind of gangsters, but they kind of look after us as well. We've got a good kind of social system. If worse comes to worse, I can always go sign on the dole and I'll be able to get enough money to be able to get me through. We're a little bit too comfortable. So my advice to anybody, right? And I know, unfortunately, a lot of your listeners are already the converted, and they want to hear the stories about what's going on, where's the future, and so on and so forth. But for anybody that I meet, the hardest part is to get off zero. It's like in Australia, they wanted to introduce value-added tax, and they knew there was going to be a kick up of a stink. So they introduced value-added tax just at 5%. Look, guys, we need to be able to put money into the coffers to be able to build our country. So it comes in at 5%. And yes, there was people kicking up a stink, and there was people not happy about it, and so on and so forth. But, you know, it's 5%. It's a little bit of an increase. We can stomach it. Now, from 0 to 5%, that's where the issue was. The following year, they increased it to 7%, and up it went to 10%, and all the way up to 20%, because it was now normalized. Getting off zero is the hardest thing. And so all I do with anybody that I meet is I encourage them to just go ahead. Here's my referral link for crypto.com. We'll both get a tiny little bit of a kickback. All you do is put that little bit of a kickback into crypto and just watch what happens. Just watch what happens. Watch how it goes up and down and so on and so forth. And now they're now in the rabbit hole. I have a friend who I managed to convince put 100 quid of his hard-earned cash in plus the 25 euro referral into Bitcoin. And lo and behold, it went down. And he said, ha, see, told you.
Yeah.
Ponzi scheme. And I said, no problem. Look, just hold on to it. I says, if you want, I'll sell you some chocolates and I'll sell it to you for Bitcoin because I want those Bitcoins. And he's like, no, I'll hold on to it. I'll hold on to it. And lo and behold, the market starts to increase and he's now up. And now he's looking at, oh, well, maybe I should put some more of my available money in. It's getting off that zero.
Very good.
I think with a tiny bit.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, like I'll talk to, you know, people in my local town and they know I'm into Bitcoin and they'll almost go, that thing went down, or like they'll ask me about it and I'll say, you know, did you get started? Did you do anything with the information I gave you? It's like, I'm looking at it, but it's not going up. And I'm like, it's not that easy. It's not like you buy it and it just goes straight up and you get rich. That's not how this game works. I know we think it's a get rich quick scheme and it's an easy way, but the Bitcoin that I'll dollar cost average into this week, I'm not buying it for its price tomorrow. I'm not buying it for its price next week. I'm not buying it for its price next year. It's investable capital. So I'm locking it up. My time frame is like maybe 10 years, maybe 20, 30. Whatever I bought today, I might think about liquidating some to go and do something with. But before then, I love working. I have business. I don't need that money. It's investable capital. So I'm buying it for its price. Like I tell people, buy your Bitcoin. If you're buying Bitcoin, buy it for the price it's going to be in 4 years. That's your minimum holding period to go through one halving cycle. When Bitcoin always gets repriced, goes on a tear and finds a new higher plateau than it had before the halving cycle. So rather than looking at the day-to-day, but I want to buy it today and it'll be worth more tomorrow. Okay, yeah, it's worth more tomorrow. I know, I'm a crypto investor. I'm going to buy more and it'll be worth more tomorrow. But like, that's not how life works. That's not how markets work. Investors, as you mentioned, get rich slowly. You can get really rich slowly. Warren Buffett, he's one of the richest men in the world only because he lived so long. He only, like, his rate of return was 10%, which isn't amazing. Like Bitcoin's averaging 160%, but he returned 10%, but he just done it for 90 years. And that's how he became a multi-billionaire, okay? Not that he was this mad trader buying and selling and actively doing all this magic. No, he just had patience. Awesome, man. It's been a great conversation. I'd like just to ask you for a bit of crack. We know this is not financial advice. We'll put the disclaimer in. Nor me or Darren are financial advisors. We're just entrepreneurial plebs, I suppose.
Without a doubt.
But, in your thesis, and you can give a bearish and a bullish answer, what's the price of Bitcoin in 2030?
So I knew you were going to ask this question because I've listened to all of your podcasts, and I'm gonna throw kind of a little bit of a speed wobble in there because honestly, I don't care. I don't care what it does. If it stays at 45 grand and that's where it stays, cool, happy days, because I have this digital asset that I'm going to be able to trade with in the future. But for the crack, do you know what? Because Bitcoin has the ability to be the tradable asset in the future when all else collapses, it means that all of the other available value in the world can pour into this medium.
Yeah, well, if your thesis plays out and the world collapses, well, then a Bitcoin's going to be 5 to 15 million per Bitcoin. I don't want to
That's
live
what
in that
look.
world,
That's what
though.
I was gonna say. All of that value can pour into this medium,
Yeah,
like, and so like it almost doesn't have a cap. So
no,
look, I'm an eternal optimist. Like, to my much suffering wife, I will always look on the positive side of things, despite my dystopian view on the future. Uh, so look, I think it almost has no cap, and I mean it. I think it could comfortably go to 500,000.
2030, one Bitcoin is 500,000.
I think comfortably, if not more.
Sure, I call you a bear with them figures. Because if fiat collapses in your 2 to 4 year thesis, well then I'm like,
Well, the
what?
thing about it is, people are going to have to trade. They have to trade to be able to survive. And if this system collapses, it's already there. It's ready to go. It's clunky right now. Like you said, the frictionless part of it will come in time. I mean, you said it before. You've got thousands of developers all working really hard on your asset to make it more valuable. Jesus, like, you've got a whole bunch of employees that you're not paying. Like, it's
That's awesome, Darren. That's brilliant. Where can the listeners get some Magic Mayan?
yeah. Look, so magic Mayan. So magic because I think chocolate is magic, and Mayan because of Mayan civilization kind of developed the cocoa bean into a bitter medicinal paste and then added sweeteners and it became chocolate. So magic Mayan. It's magicmayan.com. And I'm consulting with Skellig's Chocolate. Skellig's Chocolate do just incredible chocolate. So if you want your Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff, Skellig's Chocolate would be a good spot to go as well.
Awesome, Darren. Thanks very much, man. It's been awesome to chat to you.
Dinny, you too.